Good morning, it's Emma Davis from veterinarycareers.com.au, and it's my great pleasure today to introduce you to Dr. Julia Pasztor. Julia is a veterinarian who graduated in 2015 from Washington State University in the US and is currently living in New Zealand and is working as a systems auditor on the Ministry of Primary Industries, MPI, systems audit team for the New Zealand government. So welcome, Julia.
Thank you, Dr. Emma Davis.
Oh, welcome. It's so great to meet you. We've been having a fantastic chat this morning to get to know each other a bit better. We've followed each other on social media for a while, and it's so nice to actually, be in the same room, even though you're in New Zealand and I'm in Canberra. And to get to know you and your history. And it was great that you filled out some background information. I always ask my interview people I'm going to interview questions, and it came up that your parents were Hungarian refugees. That's amazing. Would you like to share a bit about that?
Yeah, happy to. It's quite a big story in my life. My parents illegally left Hungary in 1987 while Hungary was under the Iron Curtain. They claimed political asylum, but they left for personal reasons, unable to continue living in Hungary. And they went to Austria, and they were pulled over on the train by Russian personnel, and thankfully made it through. Then they had to go through checks in Austria and at the UN camp, and by all luck, they made it through. And I was born in the refugee camp, and a couple of years later, we were accepted on green cards to the United States.
Oh, wow. That is a huge history. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was just giving me shivers. This is such a topical topic for us at the minute. We were having a chat about that before. And so if you've got a message around that, I mean, you're an esteemed colleague. Your parents have done such a brave thing and gotten you to where you are. So is there a message that you've got around and this history to share with us today? Like, if you could tell that government's one thing, what would you tell them?
I guess, and surprisingly, I might be getting a little emotional, but
same.
We have to operate with kindness. There are laws, but at the end of the day, these are people who are crossing into our borders. In the case of my parents, my mom was 18 and my father 21. And they didn't know anything outside of Hungary because of the government that they were under. In fact, there weren't things like bank accounts. They had to wait in line to get soap or bread. So such a different life, and personal circumstances made it impossible for them to live in the country. And so they had no other choice. And I'm really grateful that they left, because I exist because of their choices. And not only did they have to go through the trouble of leaving the country, but then even being accepted legally now on green cards into the United States, they had to overcome, and we still have to overcome, the hatred that comes towards immigrants. When Trump was reelected, or not, when he was elected.
No, don't say that. Let's just say.
Yeah, when he was elected in 2016, not 2 months ago, where my parents approached in the grocery store when they were speaking Hungarian to each other over the grocery list, that someone told them to shut up, they need to go back to their country and leave the United States. Yeah. So these are two incredible people who are legally in the country. We're citizens, we're naturalized citizens in the US. And not that we need any credentials to be there, but they're doing an incredible job for their community, working for an organization that they created called Farmer Frog, that is feeding low and no income communities in Washington State. So compassion, our political leaders need to come with compassion.
You're amazing. I can see why you're so amazing, because they sound just amazing. I'd seen that Farmer Frog on your bio maybe, and also on your Facebook, and I've been wondering about that. So thanks for sharing that. We'll do another interview about that later.
We can, yeah.
So as a vet, so you're a 2015 graduate from Washington State Uni. So let's talk about your veterinary career to date. And so you're a government vet, who's living in New Zealand, so international, and it's amazing to have you in New Zealand, where I kind of see that as a state of Australia. Sorry, New Zealand.
Kiwis won't accept that.
Kiwis don't like that. No, that's right. We need a bit of.
We can be friends. We can be friends.
Make them watch, and the US would say that of Australia as well, which would be totally offensive. So, what's your message that you've got to share with us today about veterinarians and your career so far? So we were talking a little bit about some of the issues in vet, and if you had a magic wand, what would be the things, one or two things that you would change in vet med if you could?
Well, there's so many topical things that affects veterinarians today. Two that are close to my heart are climate change and suicide, and they do work hand in hand in a bit. So I'd be more than happy to talk on both of those.
No, please. Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah. So which one first? How do you keep them interacting? That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we can start with suicide, and that topic for me is especially important because I myself have struggled with depression in the past and was suicidal before veterinary school. So the stats are leaning against me. They say, I guess the mental health specialists say that if you've already been thinking of suicide or attempted, you are more likely to have an episode later. So it's something that is closer to my heart. But then I've also had colleagues that I've lost to suicide, and it just breaks my heart that they succumb to this disease, because it is, in my opinion, a disease. Some of it we can control, some of it we can't, some of it is outside influences, and some of it is inside. So of course it's a very complex problem. As far as how it affects veterinarians, in many countries, including New Zealand, Australia, and the US, our population of veterinarians are more highly susceptible to suicide than the general population. I think in the US, veterinarians have beaten dentists for suicide rates in the last year. And it's heartbreaking that in a profession where the majority of us know that we won't be making money, so it's not that we're coming into this profession to make money, we're coming here to help animals, some of the most vulnerable beings on this planet, and we want to be their voice. We want to be there to help them and heal them, and we're giving up.
Or we're fatiguing. Yeah, it's really complicated, isn't it? I read a stat, there've been a bit of press this year, and they're saying in Australia, veterinarians are 4 times more likely on average to commit suicide than the population on average, and twice, I think, as much as doctors and dentists. And I think we thought they were the highest. And it's not something we want to own, but it's really fascinating that it's happened. And so how do you see it tying in with the environment and the climate change issue? Like, that's really interesting as well.
Well, going back to suicide, I personally feel that there are a lot of factors that play into it, and part of it is our changing world. So the add-on of dealing with social media and the harassment that comes with that, or even just the stress of maintaining a business that can reach enough people so that you get the clients that you need, that's a whole added element. Then we have the increased debt, crippling in some countries, like in the United States. And the environment around us is changing. There's man-made climate change that is undeniable with the science that's out there. And according to the UN, we have maybe 10 years to make significant, drastic changes to our economic and social structures around the world to mitigate the catastrophes that are potentially coming our way that can result in societies crumbling. So it's not on the forefront, but if those changes don't happen in the next 10 years, then there's no veterinary profession. So as compassionate human beings, when we're not only dealing with the clients and the patients and our families making the practice work, but then we read these articles that are coming out. We see that our politicians are turning a blind eye or writing little carbon acts that allow you to trade carbon here and there, but doesn't actually address the problem.
Yeah.
It becomes hopeless. It feels hopeless. But with that said, I was very fortunate to attend Jane Goodall's 85th birthday talk just 2 weeks ago here in Christchurch.
Yeah.
And she obviously comments on this all the time. She's done incredible work around the world, not just for animals, but for people as well, realizing that people are responsible for maintaining conservation. So she invested a lot in developing economies and whatnot. And she does have a message to say that each and every one of us have a part to play, and we cannot give up. We cannot. We must keep doing what little thing we can. And for me, in terms of dealing with depression and putting suicide to the side, holding on to gratitude and being both grateful and thankful for myself for being able to do what I can and trying to think on what I can for the things that matter most to me, and kind of making sure that there's a planet here that exists for my children in the future is a little bit important.
Such a powerful thing that you can do, isn't it? Just to actually, and I think that's what's driving my, doing these businesses, the veterinary careers business and my coaching businesses, is helping. Like, vets are such helpers, and if we can let that flow and actually find an output for that, like a way to let that out and to actually have this impact and influence that we've worked so hard to have and not feel that we can't influence, then it's really empowering and it's a great place. It's a lot of joy and happiness. Has that been your experience with that?
I completely agree. And part of that is being willing to talk about the difficult things, being open to talk about what troubles us, but do it in a compassionate sort of way, trying not to get lost in the snowball of emotion, because there is good out there and we can make change happen, but we need to talk and we need to listen and we need to support each other.
I can see such leadership all over you. It's amazing. I love feminine leadership. That's one of my things, is feminine leadership. And it's that. And you've got such a great Prime Minister in New Zealand at the minute. And
oh my gosh, yes.
Leader, feminine leadership, who's like, just talk about it. Let's just find the win-win in this. And that's a really distinct feminine leadership thing, is not like I win, you lose, but how do we find the win-win in this? And just from my coaching, I'm going to be reading what you said about, vets or people who have suicidal thoughts being more prone to it. From what I'm hearing in the coaching space is that everyone has suicidal thoughts. It's just that we were never allowed to talk about it before. And so I'll just throw that back into the conversation, is that that was such a relief to me, because definitely I push myself so hard. Like, I've achieved ridiculous things. Never been an Olympian, though. That's not been one of my things. But I would push myself so hard that I'd be at the brink of fatigue repeatedly. And in that pushing state at the edge, then the thoughts have come in. And it was so refreshing for me to hear from psychologists and coaches that actually that's the human condition, that it happens, and it's not the thought that is the problem, it's the taking action that's the problem. And so if we can self-teach and train other people about what to do in that moment when that thought happens, which is to recognize it and to back away. And for me, it means, whoa, I really need to sleep. Like, I'm actually at the point of exhaustion, and to think about that and some breathing techniques and then, you know what I mean? Then there's recognition that that thought happened. Well, that means I'm really pushing myself, and what do I do now? And bring it back off the ledge, so to speak, and come back down. But yeah, like, it's something we need to talk about. Like, it's a real thing in our profession, and it's devastating. Like, we've all lost people now, and we're good people. We
are good people, and it's hard. It is hard. We are in a very tough world, and it often seems completely daunting the harassment that we get from clients, I think a large part of that is that societies, especially in developed economies, is the expectation of being able to treat your animal as though they're a person, get that free, exceptional health care, but not be willing to pay for it whatsoever. That discrepancy in expectation with reality is causing a significant problem. And we have to address that one way or the other. Either, I personally think that governments need to step up and explain to people, hey, you know, we might have a universal healthcare system for human beings, but we don't have that for animals. So if you're going to have animals, that needs to be your responsibility. And there's ways to mitigate those costs. I'm a huge advocate of pet health insurance, of emergency funds for pets. But I myself, I'm a veterinarian. I have a government job, which is paying me decently, but I'm not in a position to have a pet because I just can't afford it with everything else that's going on. And so, so I'm making that tough decision of not having a pet. But that's something that does need to be discussed. Now, of course, our governments are under significant stress with other big issues, but one way or the other, it needs to be talked about, if not by the government, then at least by our veterinary associations.
Yeah, that's right. By the profession, I think we have to have the leadership in there.
Yeah.
Start to educate society around that, and then from that, and I think that's in valuing our profession and in valuing that human-animal bond, and actually, being and owning the fact that that bond, care and medicine costs, and that vets bring great value in every setting, whether they're working on antimicrobial resistance or in auditing in the government.
Absolutely.
Or in, spaying or desexing my little dog that got desexed last week, cheeky little thing that he is. Like it's a cost, but it's also a benefit. That dog brings me great joy. There's a lot of science around now to prove that relationship with pets and humans really improves mental health. There's all these benefits to society that we have to be comfortable with as vets, that we can then educate everybody else about, and not be afraid that there is a monetary value attached to that. And now that I'm understanding that money is actually energy, and if you just think about money as energy instead of money, then you can step away from some of the negatives around it and think, well, I'm giving you energy by looking after your pet and prolonging their life and making them happy and you happy through that, and then having money as energy back is a fair exchange of positive energy. But anyway, that's probably a bit out there.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. And while veterinary medicine continues to be a private business in terms of traditional clinical practice, veterinary schools should be required to offer veterinary business courses and veterinary communication and compassion courses, because without those, we do not have the tools, like you said, to manage the day-to-day issues that we see in practice, period.
Yeah,
and that is probably another reason why we see the problem that we do with the increased suicide.
I think you're right. I think that we are in a corner, and it's a bit of a self-made corner, and it's a bit of a societal corner, and we need to find the communication ways to get out of that corner to say, we can't meet your expectations, they're unrealistic. And we also impose that on ourselves. We were talking before about vets being such givers of themselves. And I was fascinated. We had a bit of a chat earlier, Julia, and watching the time, but I think we'll go for a little bit more because I just wanted to hear your story. You've come with a huge financial burden, talking about energy, from studying in the US. Did you want to elaborate on that a little bit? Like, that's a fascinating story, being in Australia where we do have, I now realise, a bit of support for our studies. Do you want to explain where you're at with that?
Yeah, about how much time would you like me to put to
it? Not 3 years. We've got another.
Yeah,
that's right.
Just a couple of minutes. Yeah, so I was lucky in that my grades paid for my undergraduate degree, which was required in the US to then go on to a veterinary degree. And I've did not complete a master's, but that too was paid for through scholarship. But those scholarships were not available to me when I applied to veterinary school. So the only other option that I had was to take out student loans. And at the time, I calculated out that I should have graduated between 75, 80,000 US dollars if I started, and that would have been doable. That would have been doable, coming out to as, yeah, so there were plans where that, you know, I could easily pay that off within 5 to 10 years. But then just as I was accepted into veterinary school, the US Congress voted to eliminate subsidized student loans for graduate and professional students. And subsidized loans means that interest doesn't accumulate while you're in school. So now anyone pursuing a PhD, master's, or professional degree like veterinary med, dentist, pharmacy, doctor, human doctor, all of them accumulated interest on their loans while they were in school as of 2012 or 11, excuse me. And so I was one of them. And on top of that, federal and state budgets were being cut. And so the state tuition went up every year, nearly doubled every year that I attended. And the cost of living also increased because part of the university's strategy for maintaining university costs was to increase recruitment. And so by bringing in more people into town with limited amount of housing, now the housing prices went up. So I ended up graduating with $175,000 that I borrowed.
In US
now, mind you, in US dollars. After 4 years. And on top of that, the interest did accumulate for a total of $190,000. And then to add salt to the wound, over the course of that time, the state and federal departments' student loan management systems changed many times, leaving me with 17 total loans that I was paying on. So I had to consolidate those into 3 separate loans, which ended up costing a bit. I think it pushed up my debt to $213,000, and now after 4 years, I'm at $253,000.
It's gone up.
US dollars.
So it's accruing interest on your loan.
Accruing interest, and I can only pay so much, being a single family income. Because my partner just finished his PhD, so.
So you're paying off and it's going up. You can't stop it from going up at the minute.
Yes.
Oh, I just feel terrible. This is ridiculous.
Every couple of months, I go through a little bit of a panic, especially when it comes time to do something about the loans. But you have to just take what life gives you and make the best of it.
You are going to win this somehow. It's going to be a world now. But thank you for sharing that. My goodness, that is such a predicament to be in. To start your career off, like you're a 2015 graduate, you're 4 years out, you've got a good government job in, you change countries to do that. Good on you. You've got a lovely partner here. There's lots of good in your story, but that is a huge mountain to overcome, and you will, but we need to talk about this. That is crazy for young professionals to have that pressure on them at the start of their career, when it's one of the biggest, the career has such a pressure inbuilt in it anyway, and particularly at the start of it, is phenomenal.
Well, and it is affecting our lives. I'm really happy with the career choice and the career path that I'm on, but it was what pushed me out of traditional clinical practice. I didn't start clinical practice because I needed money and government paid the money. So I went to government, and my partner and I are electing not to get married at this stage because it would hurt our credit scores back in the US with our current financial situation. So we're electing not to be married. We're electing not to have kids. We're electing not to get a house because of the position that we're in. And it's very frustrating, but again, there's that big picture stuff of what's going on and what you can't control. You make the best of it, and some days are better to handle than others. So
good on you. That's amazing. Good on you. Just personally, if I can help anyway. I don't have 250,000 US, but if
I am looking for sponsors.
Yeah, that's right. We might need that. We might need some corporate sponsors for our veterinarians, because that's huge. Like, that's a big thing. So you're a business.
And there are some stepping up. There are, in the US, there's a couple of companies that are trying to do something about it, but the amount that they're putting to it is hardly going to touch an individual's debt. It's just very little. So it's starting to happen. It's a topic that's, I'm going to speak on the US because that's where my loans are from, but student loans are being addressed in the Democratic presidential nominees, and I hope it continues being on the forefront, along with climate change and along with other things that are going on in US politics. But it's something that even here in New Zealand we need to address, because the cost of Massey University is going up. Students are coming out with more student loans, and in private practice they just aren't paying enough to allow these students to be debt-free. We have veterinarians who are just graduating, they're professionals, and they have to make the choice between living in a shack without heat or living with 4 other roommates.
Yeah.
That's not the life that we're going into.
Yeah.
We're grown adults. We should be able to stand on our own. We shouldn't have to rely.
Adults. Yeah. That's the thing. We're educated, highly skilled, educated adults.
Exactly.
And people I'm coaching, when I hear these stories, I'm like, you cannot function at the highest level that you need to function at to be a veterinarian and to be on top of things and to face whatever comes in the door as a mixed practice veterinarian. If you don't sleep, if you don't have the basics needs met. So
yes,
no problem.
And like you commented on, we do a lot of things in veterinary medicine, across industry, government, private practice, and so we are very valuable people to society who need to be taken care of either by ourselves or by the government, or a mix of that. Society.
Community as well. Yeah, that's right. It's so precious talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We'll wrap up. Have you got advice to a younger you that you would give yourself if you were going to look back in over your journey so far in your career so far? Is there anything that you would like someone to have patted you on the shoulder 10 years ago and told you that you think might help some of our viewers?
It's actually a quote that Jane Goodall shared with us a couple weeks ago, and she said, when the heart and mind work together, we can meet our truest human potential.
It's beautiful. Oh, that's so good. We'll write that one up and we'll put it on the thing as well. Thank you so much, Julia. That's been just a really precious interview, and thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the good work that you're doing and your passion for our profession. And I look forward to doing some more with you and finding how we can synergistically help and get our profession a bit more sorted out. And,
thank you.
Caring for the people within it.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, I'll sign off. Emma Davis from Veterinary Careers, and a wonderful interview with Dr. Julia Pasztor, and we look forward to talking to you again. Okay. Bye.
Take care.
Cool. Oh, no, wrong one.